No, it's not. It's 7 o'clock.
Hey everybody, it's Pajama Life with our review of the 80s icons being Eddie and I Like Me. Let's go.
I've done so many different types of things.
Good morning, my neighbors!
He had that appointment with Destiny.
He changed the way we view comedy.
God damn, this your place? I started so young. Eddie was right out of high school, but he was just fearless. My stuff took off because they'd never seen a young black person take charge.
Oh, the new sheriff in town.
He had the #1 movie, comedy special, and pop song.
From stand-up comic to big screen sex symbol. That's what they said, I didn't say it. Eddie never stops creating. I want to show them that I'm not like anybody in this town. I'm everybody in the scene and everything in between.
He amplified black talent.
He changed the world. Not just American culture, he changed the world.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Pajama Life and I'm Pajama and these two guys are Patrick. Say hey to the people.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Hopefully, you're all having a good night.
And this guy right here, David. Say hey to the people.
Hey, everybody. Great to be with you. Thanks for joining, as I guess we're going to party all the time, as Eddie Murphy might say.
Which is still a banger, by the way. And we are starting off with the Eddie Being Eddie documentary, and then we'll look at the John Candy, and then I want to talk about some of the similarities and differences of the two. And David, what did you think of this documentary of Being Eddie?
I thought this was just fantastic. I knew very little, frankly, about Eddie Murphy off camera or off stage, with his family, with his experience with his birth father as well as his stepfather. I thought it was fascinating and a really great kind of trip down memory lane, and just to remember the dynamic presence of him in his youth. We
Mhm.
I think we've talked about it on this program before, that how Eddie Murphy is evolved into kind of like the father character, or this great voiceover character in the animated work, which he certainly is. But man, he was a dominant figure and had his, and could do, was really, for with little or no true acting experience, did a fantastic job in dramatic roles. You've seen him stretch himself over the years. This memory lane, man, I would hate to vacuum or dust his house. If I did, I'd get a lot of exercise. That's for darn sure. But a story, neat to see this guy. Didn't know some of the work he had done in terms of levels of generosity with some great talents that had
Mhm.
hard times. Um, where there is comedy, there is sadness, and I think figure out ways to kind of laugh through the pain. You see that in some of his work and the impact that he's had on other comedians, and how the passing of the torch in some respects, perhaps of say Richard Pryor, and just the way that Hollywood perceived African American comedians and such. I thought this was a really but I think very informative program. I loved it. What about you guys? What'd you think?
Well, you know what, David? I'm going to disagree a little bit because I feel like this was not that revelatory. I thought it was excellent in what it was, but I really felt like it only scratched the surface. I think with a lot of documentaries, you get to hear both the good and the bad of the person, because you have people who have some conflict, maybe, who can share a different side. But I feel like this one only talked about, for the most part, the good things about him. And I love the stories. And I loved seeing the retrospective of everything. But I wanted to know more. But you get the sense he's very guarded and he's very introverted. right? And he has a certain amount he's going to share, and that's it. And I think that's kind of what we got. I thought it would have been interesting to me is to talk to Mel B, who had that baby on him. That was a big controversy. The trans woman who had that big scandal with him, that precipitated him going into family movies. If you all remember, that was the reason he started getting into family movies, to clean up his image. And who were the people who were kicked out of the circle and why? And that's what I would, not that I want to know the dirt, but sometimes that gives you a richer picture of a person, to not just see their good sides, but sometimes their problematic sides. But what I really liked about him, and it's the core of what we're going to talk about, is that he liked himself. He said that, I like myself, and I wasn't ever going to do anything to take myself out of it. And I think that was a really astute and informative part of his nature, is that that's not ego. That's a sense of self, that I like and respect myself so much, I'm not going to do anything to mess up this God-given talent or opportunity. So he didn't take drugs, he didn't drink, he left parties early. He might have seen some stuff, because I want to know what happened that weekend at Rick James' house.
Rick James.
That had to be some craziness he saw, but he was able, because he has a strong sense of self, to separate himself from that. Because if you talk to other people who hung out with Rick James, Charlie Murphy included. And so I liked the documentary and appreciated it. But I didn't think it could have revealed more than what it did. Pat, what do you think?
You hit on some of the points I was going to say. The thing is, Eddie Murphy's still alive. He is obviously controlling, or at least has a heavy hand in whatever he's going to put out, or whatever's going to be put out about him. So, here he is inviting people, the production people, into his house. He's got his thumb on the scale, whatever that is. And maybe it's all true. Maybe he was a super good guy, but there were some sketchy bits that he kind of touched, and then we're gonna move around it, and I mean it was very, for lack of a better word, it felt like a publicist crafted type of thing. Eddie Murphy is an amazing talent, and there's no two ways about that. And like we talked about, like you both have talked about, how cool it was to see stuff he'd forgotten he did, and even it was just because he has such a large body of work. He's almost Stephen King of of movies. He's just
he
keeps cranking it out.
Those movies have made, I think, $4 billion total.
Wow.
I think all of his movies. So he's in the extreme rarefied air of actors.
Yeah. So he's controlling the narrative, and it was good to see some of the stuff. It was interesting to and I think that for the most part, Eddie Murphy is obviously in control of Eddie Murphy. Always has been, to a certain extent. He made a few missteps, but you know what? It's like they talk about. He got in at like 18, and for him to have made it through as far as he did and as long as he has, without anything super major or super like forever weighing you down type of thing, that's impressive, and give full props to him, for getting through this. But it was great to watch. It was interesting to see it was kind of like a greatest hits reel. You get to see a lot of the cool stuff he's done over the years, and how he kind of reinvented things, where he acted in 7 or 10 different parts in a movie, and Eddie Murphy is a genius when it comes to voices and inhabiting characters. So it was a good watch. I don't regret a single minute of it. It was interesting, but did feel a little bit. Felt a little overproduced. Like we're like, ooh, we gotta make this look good. Let's show him in the house laughing with the kids, you know. Oh, the puppets was hilarious, by the way. And I'd heard something about that before I watched it. I was like, I see what they're talking about now. Okay. But you know, I would tell anybody who lived through that era, like all of us have, and saw all those movies,
Yeah.
it's definitely worth your time to go watch it, you know, just to kind of, you know, if nothing else, walk down memory lane. I remember Party All the Time. I actually had that on a 45. It was
Oh
so good.
yes, I
So,
had it on cassette.
so I'm
Oh
just
my
saying
god.
it Eddie Murphy from the 80s was a lot different from Eddie Murphy of the 20s here,
Yeah.
you know, I'm just saying. So there we go. That's I would say watch it.
Yeah. And if you remember, I remember the controversy about his comments around gay men. And then there were some questions going on. So there's a lot they left out that could have really been illuminated. Because at this point, you know what? He's at the top. He don't have to worry about anything. And I think his star will never, unlike that crap barrel David Spade, his star is never falling. You know, his planet, he's a planet, not just a star. So definitely, I think we all agree. Check out the documentary Being Eddie, but also you check out as well. What is the Seinfeld shorts? The driving with coffee
Driving
with
with
comedians.
in cars with coffee.
Yeah,
Coffee with
in
comedians
cars
or
with
something like that.
comedians and coffee. And there's an Eddie Murphy segment. That one is much more revealing. Definitely check it out. Okay, up next is kind of maybe the opposite spectrum. The sweet, wholesome, good guy, John Candy's I Like Me. Let's take a look.
This is a guy who, the minute you see his face, you're going to smile.
He was amazingly funny.
Thank you.
He was one of the top performers out of all of them.
John did distinctly different characters. John was always there.
He was so gentlemanly and so Canadian.
Nobody had bigger expectations for himself than John.
I'd made winning my whole life. And when you make winning your whole life, you have to keep on winning.
The weight of everything he was doing was just too much.
It's very unhealthy for people pleasers.
Can't really do favors for people.
If you go a whole lifetime eating your feelings, drinking your feelings, smoking your nerves, it shows up.
You know, there's some things that are just painful, and you can't make them not painful.
Hollywood still reacting to the shocking news.
John Candy is dead at the age of 43.
Well, you think what you want about me. I'm not changing. I like me.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful tribute. Pat, what did you think?
It's the difference between this and the last one. We'll talk about that, and then we're going to wrap it up with a compare and contrast. But John Candy, man, you want to talk about something I was not prepared for. Man, the Macaulay Culkin talks, you know, my wife actually had tears because it is so moving to hear these people who owe him nothing, you know, they're not going to get anything from him anymore. These people loved this man, and you know, the way he would, and it sounds like he was like an acting catalyst, you know. He would show up, and someone who acted at a level 9 could be acting at a level 11 when he was with them because he made them better. And as he was that kind of a giving, he wasn't trying to steal the spotlight. He got the spotlight because he was that good, and he made everything around him that much better. The things that I did find super interesting, it sounds like him and John Hughes had a wonderful friendship, which really shows in the movies that he was in for John Hughes. I mean, after the John Candy documentary went through, the next recommendation on Netflix for me, or Prime, whichever one I was watching on, it came up is Uncle Buck, and you just fall into that. God, you just fall in love with it again because such a performance. You can tell he has such a bond with those kids. You can tell he really liked everybody, and he would sacrifice himself, which it feels like he did if you watch the whole thing, he would sacrifice himself for everybody just so that they could, look better or shine a little brighter than he did. And that's, man, that's a mensch, man. I'm just telling you, that is exactly the kind of person everybody should try to be, except for maybe the overweight and stuff. And you need to deal with stuff. And felt like he didn't deal with it really good. But I mean, he made everybody better around him, and that was just impressive as hell. You know what? We lost a real legend there. So,
and I think with him, it's like you said, but that's a double-edged sword. Everybody likes you, but what are you doing to yourself to make everybody like you? It's a constant. And like they said, the business is hard on people pleasers, because people, and like what happened, took advantage of him. He, always trying to take care of everybody else and neglecting himself. And at
you
some
got to
point,
stay fat because it's funnier. Yeah.
That's insane. That's insane. And they don't care that it's his health. At 341 pounds, that's not good. And he, people don't see food as an addiction, but that's definitely, he used food just as someone might use heroin or someone might use cocaine. He was using food and alcohol to suppress feelings and to deal with his anxiety. And I think only at the end was he getting diagnosed as having anxiety, which makes sense. And it was too late. And I think it was, he's such a good person, but sometimes the world isn't kind to good people like him. And the tragedy of his father passing at 35, and then nobody talking about it. That's crazy work. And just okay, he's gone. And that's it. And that is haunting. It's bad enough for your parent to pass away at a young age. What was he, like 5 or 6 or something? And nobody explained anything. That is terrifying. And so I think that is his demon that he fought with his whole life. And I think that came out in some of the behavior. So what I had wished was that he had taken the time to get the help he needed, and then we could have had him longer. But sometimes people are like comets, and they shine bright and then they're gone. So his is a very different story at that same time, but you didn't hear about him doing crazy, like drugged out, like with John Belushi and I guess Chris Farley was later. But that Saturday Night Live crew, they were as high can be back then. And so that he stayed away from those excesses, but then use food and alcohol as a way out as well. It's very interesting, but I like he's such a beautiful spirit and a beautiful person that it was so nice to see. David, what'd you think?
I learned so much about John that I didn't before. And I think we all have, whether it's Uncle Buck or so many different things he's in, the characters that he's brought out. One of his films that he made, I believe was Only the Lone with and in one of her last roles, the legendary actress Maureen O'Hara, who played his mother in the story. And this is, this film, I think, kind of encapsulated so much of maybe John Candy, just the person, as you're trying to, you're trying to please people, and then you're trying to figure out a way to kind of come to the forefront yourself. And it's very rare when the comic laughter, it's really rare when the sidekick or those extras that are just, especially on the comedic side, where in some cases, it might even be a level of exploitative, that it's just,
Mhm.
I'm a guy and I'm goofy and you're going to laugh. His talent, his heart, his charm shined through that allowed him to take on in the film I mentioned, a romantic role, a leading man role. You saw him begin to get those roles at this point, and you really saw how he shined. Some with I think the Summer Rental movie, where he's a
Mhm.
there on the Jersey Shore and his great stuff. He is just fun. And what a beautiful story. I had no idea that he had professional football aspirations, athlete at one time, or that he was a minority owner in a Canadian Football League team. That to me is an amazing thing. And I got to tell you, when we look at our neighbor to the north, who some people wish to try to steal and absorb in as our 51st state, we got a lot to learn from those great folks up
Oh
north
yeah.
about maple syrup and hockey, the talent that has come out of that nation that has
Mhm.
so brought joy to the world. John Candy.
Oh no. Your sound's in and out.
Oh no,
No, there you go.
great, great thing to watch. What a wonderful story. And again, we'll do the compare contrast, but the point, Patrick's point, I think very astute, where you're having a documentary in a retrospective allows maybe a more full story, both
Yes.
sides of the coin to be shown. Netflix, of course, has a pretty big, good contract with Eddie Murphy, I think, right now too. So again, watch this flick, get to know John Candy, then go laugh with him in these wonderful films through the.
And I think it's really great to look at these two at the time and look at the compare and contrast. Because I think with Eddie Murphy, you get a kind of sanitized view of his life. And that his core was his sense of self. He knew what he wanted. He said, I knew what I wanted from a young age. And I like myself. So that kept me from some of the excesses. And then John Candy, I I think he struggled with his sense of self and who and he liked himself, but it would seem like it was more, I'm not going to change because these things are what help me to cope and I don't want to give them up. That's just, I don't care. I'm not giving them up. But they're both of them bring joy to people and they can't help it. You know what I mean? When you just sit there talking to Eddie Murphy, uh, and I think that's the thing about both of them. They can turn it on and they can dial it up when they're on. But then in their private life, very, very introspective, very introverted, not life of the party. Just kind of like down because all that energy goes to other people. I think Eddie Murphy learned how to corral it in a way and had his family protecting him. And that might have been because he was so young. But I think the two, especially during that time, it's amazing that they came out. Can you imagine? Think about yourself at 17. Like 15, he was starring in the clubs. 17, he was on Saturday Night Live. 17, 18, he was on Saturday Night Live. Imagine yourself at 18 and you get that level of fame.
And not
19, 19, still. Shit, you out of high school. You just graduated from high school. Imagine within a year having the number one movie, the number one song, the number one
You,
TV
you know,
show.
and the thing is, you don't even need to really imagine it. You can look through the ranks of professional athletes everywhere, and you can see what happens to people who are 19 and don't have a good sense of grounding. What they do when they get that kind of
Justin
crazy
Bieber.
money and crazy fame. That's I mean. He dodged a lot of bullets. He was like Neo in the Matrix, just dodging bullets.
Yep.
And John Candy, I felt to a certain extent, was the kind of guy who would take the bullets in order to protect the people behind him. It
Yeah.
felt, I mean, he gave such a great, I mean, the tributes to all these people, they don't owe him, anything at this point. I mean, and it was Colin Hanks who directed that and produced that.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks' son, and if you, I
Yeah.
mean, he's going to be a voice in the next, mark my words, in the next decade of documentaries, because he's done several of these now that are really well done. I mean, obviously, comes from a Hollywood family. Got his dad to show up for this one, but I mean, John can't. The comparison, they both were similar in the fact that they were both in that genre at the same time, but from vastly different origin stories, vastly different families, vastly different. And it's interesting to see how they both handled it, because they both
And
did
both
handle it
two
too.
tragic father stories as well.
Yes, yes. I
One
mean, the
one
whole.
murdered and one died at a very young age, and it shaped them, but it shaped them differently.
Yes, it did, and because I don't know if it's a Canadian thing or something, but John Candy's just wanting, and just all the stories about how he would just stand around and sign autographs because people were interested in me. Heck yeah, I want to be your friend, and that kind of thing. And you don't see that amongst current. I mean, I'm sure there are. If I wanted to dig into it and could think of people, but I mean, that's, like I said, that's just. I feel lessened because I did never meet that guy, because you watch this story and you just hear about how he improved so many people.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy had some really interesting stories too, for the comparison, where he took care of the funeral expenses for, I want to say it was Rick James and like Dolomite and two or three other people that just didn't have any money
Red
after they
Fox,
died. Red Fox,
and,
they didn't have any
yeah.
money. These guys were like comic legends on primetime TV and stuff. So he did the right thing, for them. It's just, I don't know if it's an apples to apples. It might be like an apples to beef jerky. I don't know. Total. You eat both of them and you eat both of them and they both are really tasty, but they're not the same at all. So, there was it
Yeah.
was a lot
And I
there was a
think
lot.
too, what separates them is their mother's reactions to the tragedy of what happened to their fathers too.
Yeah.
John Candy's mother was very
Repressed it a
depressed
bit.
and
Yeah.
needed some help, and his mother, she was a single mom, and then she found Vernon, who raised them. So he had a very stable home. And so I think you see kind of what that nature nurture kind of thing plays out a little bit. But to me, if you have your birthday, your 21st birthday party at Studio 54, and you're not a crackhead after, you really got a strong sense of self. And and I thought the two parts that I saw the most emotion out of Eddie Murphy were him talking about his kids, but also him talking about his brother, Eddie Murphy. I mean, Charlie Murphy. Charlie Murphy, who turned out to be brilliant as well, just in a kind of rougher, uncut kind of version, but just as fantastic. And I say, Charlie was super handsome too. So it was some crazy stuff going, and he was with it. The life that Eddie kind of held back from. It looked like Charlie was like, yeah, I'll do it. He was hanging out with him. And so, he but I think that Charlie always, and that's a beautiful thing too, is that Charlie could have been the jealous brother. He was the older brother, and he's watching his younger brother become a superstar. Sometimes that's creates a lot of jealousy in people, but not him. He just was proud of him and loved him and got mad when people didn't like Eddie Murphy as much. So I think having that was the most poignant, I feel like, in the whole movie, is him talking and his realness. That was the most real of Eddie Murphy in that documentary.
And incidentally, it's someone who cannot control their narrative anymore. So I mean, that just makes that point a little bit even stronger. That when you're alive, you're controlling your narrative. You're especially anybody who's like John Candy when he was alive, or anybody like Eddie Murphy. I mean, they got full creative control. If you're going to have access, you got full creative control. So you're going to shine yourself in your best life. Charlie Murphy's passed, and so has John Candy. So people, when they're showing them at the real, and they're showing them what they've really said.
Yeah. And that was beautiful. That made me really appreciate the documentary, is seeing his emotion, and it was very fleeting. If you notice, I think he did get choked up, and I think they cut it out. You know what I mean? So he, kind of controlled that, but very beautiful part of the documentary. And his John Candy's children, it was really, I thought their comments were really great to hear, some of the things they experienced as well. So I think it's a really good look at, and that was the 80s. They kind of encapsulated the 80s, those two, the wild hedonism of it, but also the drive and ambition to do something different and new and things people hadn't seen before, and the groundbreaking that had. I mean, if you think about it, John Candy broke it for people of a different size, right? You didn't see very many people who were overweight, or size inclusivity, I guess I should say, being the leading man. You didn't see that. You saw him as the bumbling best friend or something like that, but he was leading man material. And then Eddie Murphy, you never seen a young black man do what he did, and the groundbreaking roles that he had, so many. And that Nutty Professor, I remember Jerry Lewis talking about it, because young people might not know it was a remake. The Nutty Professor was a remake, and you would think Jerry Lewis would be like, that's terrible. I can't believe somebody's doing that. He was so complimentary. If you go on YouTube, you can find his interview about it. And he was like, this is something special. I can't wait for people to see what he does with this movie. And he was right. I mean, that was crazy. And then to see a young Dave Chappelle.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh, to think you have old guard and new guard in this documentary, and to see. And we'll talk later. We'll talk on another episode about his Bill Cosby.
He's American. Hey, Eddie Murphy is America's dad now. That's all I got to say about that.
Right. He made it through. Who would have ever thought? If you remember the raw and delirious days, to see Eddie Murphy with 10 kids and is a happy, well-contented dad, you wouldn't. And Cosby is a convicted rapist and felon. You would have never put those together, but that's a whole nother show.
Okay.
Oh, you're in and out, David. Say it again.
I'd say that when the Hollywood looking glass, it's a big difference what we see between the reality of people versus the Hollywood projected of what someone is trying to sell.
Yeah. It's an interesting take. And so definitely check out these two documentaries. And then in the comments below, let us know what you think about John Candy and Eddie Murphy. All right. That is it for us for this week. Next week, we will take a look at the another remake of the War of the Roses, with Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman. And we also will take a look at Freakier Friday. And we will see you next time. Pat, say goodnight to the people.
Good night, everybody. Everybody have a great week. See you next weekend.
All right, David, say goodnight to the people.
Thanks for everybody for joining us. Glad you could be with us. Have a great one. So long.
Get ready for Turkey Week, since now you all got some benefits back and people got some jobs back. Maybe we'll be able to afford Thanksgiving. So gobble, gobble, and we will see you next time. Take care. Bye.